Welcome back to Mrs. G's Parenting Help Desk. We will be discussing why discipline doesn't work. And thinking back to our discussion from last time, the parents in our video, Mom herself says that discipline does not work. She's tried spanking, she's tried yelling, she's tried timeouts, and she's exhausted and says discipline doesn't work. So what is the answer? What does work? I, for myself, I don't even like to use the word discipline. I feel it conjures up a harsh reaction from parents. I prefer to use the word guiding children's behavior. That's what we are as parents and teachers and caregivers. We are there to guide their behavior when they get off track. And we have to remember too, for the most part, children don't intentionally go off track. They just need reminders of how to get back on track, or they just need the modeling of that behavior on how to get back on track. So some suggestions include giving choices. We talked about this last time with the little boy who was having trouble getting dressed in the morning, and so it was decided that the night before put out a couple sets of clothing that the child can choose from, and that made that all better. Praising the child is another way to guide children's behavior. As parents and caregivers and teachers, we are quick to point out the negative things that children do to correct them. More importantly is pointing out the things that they are doing right, because children want to repeat those things that they're doing right, that they are getting praise from. Okay? So no matter how small the gesture, praise that gesture. So whether it's a child who's helped another child pick up crayons that were dropped, you want to praise that child who was not prompted to help the other child. And the child who dropped the crayons, if they said thank you to that child, quickly praise that child for saying thank you. We want to repeat those types of behaviors. We want the children to know that those are behaviors we want repeated, and that we like that, and that is very appropriate. So stay away from the negative if it's not something that has to do with an unsafe environment. And so I will give you an example of a boy that I had in my class, and his name is Tom. Many years ago, a preschooler of 4 years old, and so he had a big heart of gold, and he had a lot of enthusiasm, and he was very quick to be helpful. And so I guess it was as we are cleaning up and singing our cleanup song, he sees the box of crayons that doesn't have a lid on it, and it never had a lid on it, but it's a big box of crayons. He sees that sitting over on the table. He knows that needs to get put away. So in all of his enthusiasm, as he picks up these crayons and he wants to get them to the other side of the room, he turns and he runs across the room, but along the way he trips and falls, and these crayons and him land right at my feet. And as I'm standing there, he slowly picks up his head to look up at me with great concern, because what is he thinking? He's thinking Mrs. G is going to yell because I just dropped all these crayons on the floor. And so, no, that's not what I did. I stooped down right to his level, and I said, okay, Tom, that was an accident. Let's we will both help pick up the crayons and get them back over on the shelf. So with that, he had all this enthusiasm. I helped him. Other children with that came over and also helped out to get all of these crayons back into the box and over to the shelf. And when we were all done, he had a big smile on his face. He was able to carry that box of crayons over to the shelf with a reminder of walking. And glad to say that, he never did that again. One of the most important ways of guiding children's behavior is modeling appropriate behavior. And so that can be very difficult too, okay, because we might be quick to yell or spank. And so that if we're trying to get away from that, if what I'm saying is that we want guiding children's behavior, then as parents, we may fall back on those things when we are feeling very, very frustrated. So it's important that we know as parents and teachers and caregivers that we're mindful of our own behavior. It's what we are modeling for them to do. So please remember that children want to please their parents, okay? When parents praise a gesture, children want to repeat it. It does wonders for a child's self-esteem, okay? And so this brings me to our next part of this video, the learning crown. This illustration of the learning crown serves as an easy reminder of how young children learn. This format, presented by the workbook Everyday Activities for Preschool, respects the learning process of the very young child by facilitating what we already know to be true and what we have found to be the best way to introduce the very young child to the world of learning in a nurturing, stress-free, and natural way. The bottom of it says self-esteem, and it's at the bottom because it really is the most important part of this crown and of learning. So when we have a good self-esteem, good confidence, that helps us to interact with others, becoming more social. And so as part of that, you see the center of the crown is a diamond shape that talks about language. Language is needed for learning, but all pieces are integral to the other piece. Again, we need that self-esteem, that positive self-esteem to reach our full potential of the learning crown. And so I just do want to tell a story that will clarify how this works. This is a story that I got from a Dear Abby column in the newspaper many years ago, but the story is about a little girl back in the 60s. And so this little girl had come from another country to the United States, where she only spoke Spanish. Okay, she did not know any English. So you can imagine that's scary. It's even scary for adults going to a new country. So for this little girl, she went to her new school, and in her classroom, she's sitting with her new schoolmates when her teacher is now yelling at her for not knowing English. Can you even imagine what that would feel like? What does that feel like even if we're adults, never mind a first grader? And so how does that help her self-esteem? Her self-esteem obviously was not positive in those moments, okay? She's going to clam up. She's going to be very shy in the classroom. She's not going to try to do her work. She's not going to try to socialize with her new friends. She's going home and crying even going to school. And this can also, create physical situations of her having a stomach ache or throwing up before she realizes she has to go to school. Well, that probably lasted about a month. Unfortunately, it was that long when they decided to put the little girl into another classroom. And so that teacher had a different approach and a much better approach, where she met the little girl out there on the sidewalk as they were lining up for school. She took her hand, and when it was time to walk in, she walked her to the classroom and walked her to her seat in the classroom. Now, I think that little girl felt a lot different walking into that classroom than she did to the prior classroom where she was getting yelled at. And the teacher didn't know Spanish. She spoke English, the little girl spoke Spanish, but it was within a month's time that the little girl is speaking English. She's also made friends in the classroom, and she is eager to try and do the work that is put in front of her. Right? So we see a big difference when our self-esteem is very low and when our self-esteem is very high and positive. In this experiment that you are viewing, it's called the Bobo doll experiment. This experiment was done by Albert Bandura, a world-renowned psychologist. And so as you see in the video, we see an adult in a room with the Bobo doll. Children are viewing this adult either in person or on a video, but they're viewing the actions of the adult. And as we see, the adult is acting very aggressively towards the Bobo doll, hitting the Bobo doll with a hammer, with their hands, sitting on the Bobo doll, kicking, punching, throwing the Bobo doll. So the next experiment, we see the children who have observed this behavior, we see them also acting aggressively. And if there's other toys in the room, they're even using other toys in the room to hit the Bobo doll with, and kicking and punching and throwing this very same Bobo doll in very similar manners. And so we then look at the control group, and the control group has not seen the adult or the video of this aggressive behavior towards the Bobo doll. And so when they are placed in the room with some toys and the Bobo doll, they are not acting aggressively towards it. This has great impact for us, the adults, and what we need to be mindful of, the words we use and the actions that we use. Children are watching, and so much as we might say, do as I say, not as I do, they will repeat what we are doing. Our actions speak louder than our words, so that we need to be very mindful of what's dropping out of our mouth and the actions that we use. That will get copied by your child somewhere down the road, whether it's in your own home or in the classroom. So be mindful of what you're saying and doing for your own child. Along with this video series, I will also be hosting one-on-one parenting sessions for subscribers like you. Thank you for watching. This is Mrs. G at the Parenting Help Desk.